Good evening, everybody. My name is Steve Knutson, and I'm with Fairfax County Department of Transportation. And I want to welcome you to this meeting tonight to discuss the traffic calming plan for Fairway Drive. We will first begin with some introductions, and I think tonight we should have from the Hunter Mill District Supervisor's Office, Paul Davis and Shamali Hoth on. I'm not positive they've been able to join yet, but hopefully if they're not on yet, they will be joining at some point during this presentation.
This is
And
Shamali,
then,
Steve, I'm on.
All right, it sounds like Shamali is with us, and we will proceed then. And then from FCDOT, we have Banaz Rauf, Grace Vaughn, and Nicole Machakwe. And I think Nicole has a short presentation to run through. And after Nicole runs through the FCDOT presentation, I think one of the community members has a couple of slides that he would like to show. And following the two presentations, we'll open the meeting up for questions and comments from all attending tonight's meeting. And I do believe that Chris Schumacher is logged on tonight's meeting from the Resting Association. And hopefully he can discuss anything about the Hook Road Park Plan if people have questions about that. So if we are ready to go, Nicole, you can start the presentation. And I do believe that Nicole was trying to get the closed captions working for this presentation, and hopefully she was able to. And I also think that she might be doing this presentation without her camera on because she's might be running a little bit low on bandwidth. So please accept that from her. So go ahead, Nicole.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve. And yes, unfortunately, we could not get Teams to work with closed captioning. However, this is being recorded and transcribed, so hopefully we'll be recording that as well. Well, welcome in tonight's meeting. We're going here to discuss traffic calming and the traffic calming plan that is proposed for Fairway Drive. So first, I want to go over a couple of things before I begin. Please note that this session is being recorded. Please hold all questions until after the end of the presentations, and the instructions on how to ask questions will be provided at the end of the presentation. So today, we are here to explain the traffic calming process and provide opportunity for the community to give feedback and answer any questions that you all might have. So let's begin with the traffic calming. Traffic calming is the installation of physical devices to reduce vehicle speed. These devices can be either vertical or horizontal. Vertical devices are driven over, such as speed humps, shown in the top left image, while you drive around horizontal devices, such as raised median islands, which is the top right image. Both types of devices make the road safer for both drivers and pedestrians. I do want to note that through this process, we are not permitted to install stop signs. Here we have charts and images showing the effects of decreased speed. As speed decreases, visual acuity, field of vision, and depth perception increase. Also, both reduced speed, we come to significant reduction in a number of severity of crashes involving motor vehicles. So here on this slide, we have a map of traffic calming projects throughout the county. There are over 200 projects resulting in more than 500 devices county-wide. Every district has a device, and chances that you have driven over one are pretty high. The upcoming program can be broken up into 5 steps. So step number 1 is project initiation. Step number 2 is plan development. Step number 3, community engagement. And step number 4, ballot phase. And the final step, which is step number 5, is project installation. So as I mentioned earlier, all traffic calming projects are always community initiated. The process begins with a request from the community to the supervisor's office. Once the request is received, we will first complete a basic eligibility review. Next, we will conduct a traffic study. And once it passes both eligibility and traffic study, the community then will create or form a task force. There are eligibility requirements that need to be met. It needs to be a VDOT maintained road, have a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit, be functionally classified as local, collector, or arterial. And if it's a collector or arterial, it needs to be a residential street. There is also a traffic study component. Here we have a traffic study results for Fairway Drive. For volume criteria, we need to be between 500 to 6,000 vehicles in a 24 hours, both directions combined. For this project, we had 1,265, so we met the volume criteria. And for speed criteria, the 85th percentile of speed needs to be greater than or equal to 35 miles per hour. So what this means is that 15% of vehicles need to be traveling at 35 miles per hour or faster in at least one direction of travel. The speed we found was 40 in the eastbound lane and 39 in the westbound lane, which means Fairway Drive met the speed criteria as well. So plan development is the second step. First, we conduct a site visit in the field in order to develop a draft plan. Once we have a draft plan, we will meet with the task force to get feedback and then amend the plan if necessary. Once the task force is satisfied with the draft plan, homeowners directly adjacent to any proposed measure will need to sign off on the placement of the device in order to move forward to the next step. Here we have device placement requirements. Based on the guideline, we need a minimum of 300 feet between measures and from existing stopping conditions. We need a minimum of 150 feet from an intersection, a minimum of 150 feet for adequate sight distance with any device, and it needs to fit on the existing roadway. So we need to take into account any driveways, manholes, utilities, and we also have to count for the grade of the road. So based on those requirements, we were able to draft a plan that and propose 2 speed humps with fire and rescue cutouts, as you can see on this map. And the addresses listed are the addresses or the homeowners that signed off on the adjacent properties forms, since the devices were adjacent to their homes. Here we have a graphic of a speed hump. So it is going to be 12 feet long and 3 inches at center. Here we have a schematic of a speed hump and or speed cushion. It's going to be with a fire and rescue cutout. The speed hump is, like as I said before, 12 feet long and 3 inches at center. In addition, there will be speed hump sign and recommended 15 mile per hour sign on each side of the device. And also we will have white chevrons in each travel lane. So for step 3 is a community meeting, which we are here today. This is where we present the plan for the community to obtain feedback. And based on the feedback, the task force will decide whether to amend the plan or proceed to next phase. If the task force decides to move forward, we can move forward to the ballot phase. Okay, so for ballot phase, each household in the ballot area will receive 1 vote. They will need to send it directly to the supervisor's office. The ballot period will be open for a minimum of 3 weeks, And the supervisor's office will tally the vote and notify the task force of the results. And here we have an example of the ballot. The proposed devices will be listed on the ballot, and the community will be voting on the entire plan. The task force is responsible for distributing the valid ballot packages to everyone in the ballot area. So there are 3 ways to return your ballot by the deadline. One way that you can mail the ballot, you can hand deliver to the supervisor's office, or you can email to the supervisor's office. Please do not return your ballot to the task force, and please use one of the listed methods above. And here we have the ballot area map for Fairway Drive. So there are 109 ballots. And in order for the proposed plan to move forward, we will need greater than 50% of all households to vote in favor. So this means that you would need 55 yes votes to move forward with the plan. If we get the required number of yes votes, we can move to step 5, project installation, which is the final step. So the traffic calming plan will be presented to the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors for endorsement. And then the resolution will be sent to VDOT. FCDOT will work with the Department of Public Works and Environmental Services. And finally, the traffic measures will be installed. And here's the end of our presentation. At this time, I'll direct your attention to the Fairway Drive Task Force. They have a short presentation, and after that, we will move on to any questions and answers. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I'm Steve Sarandos. I'm the point of contact for the task force, and I'm going to try to present. I've done this with Teams before, but hopefully it'll work. Oops. Does everybody see that?
Steve, I can see it. It is showing on my screen. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, just wanted to start out with some key things about the voting. I know we just you guys just went over some of that stuff, but I want to make sure that everybody remembers that if you don't send in a ballot, it is considered a no vote. So if the plan is to succeed, please make sure you actually send in your ballot. Another thing to note is, like Nicole said, with the 55 yes votes to pass the plan out of the 109, so that's over 50%. That's not 50% of the votes cast, but 50% of anyone who could vote. So just to show you how tough that is to achieve by those rules, actually none of our county supervisors would have met that metric to be elected. So it's a significant hurdle. So we need people to make sure they vote. If the plan doesn't pass, we'll need to wait 2 years to try again to get traffic calming. So everyone wants to know when we'll vote. We get that question a lot. And Nicole talked about some of that. So after this meeting, the task force needs to make a guess at whether we have enough support to proceed to the vote. If we think we do, then we'll work with FCDOT on creating and getting the ballot approved. Then we'll need to put together a ballot package with a postage paid return envelope, and then we can distribute them. I'm hoping all of this will happen very soon. And then, so why should you vote for the plan? As part of determining the Fairway Drive eligibility for traffic calming, FCDOT conducted the 24-hour traffic study. This is a summary of the results they found. They found that 91% of eastbound vehicles, 84% of westbound vehicles exceeded the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. 27% of eastbound vehicles, 19% of westbound vehicles were traveling between 35 and 54 miles per hour. Just to show you how dangerous those speeds are, I added the bottom row to this table, which comes from a AAA study about the risk of pedestrian severe injury or death when hit by a car or light truck going these speeds. You can see that as you get up into the higher speeds seen on Fairway Drive, your chance of dying rapidly increases. This is a graph of the data from the traffic study. I know it's a little hard to see. I put the link at the top if you wanted to look at it yourself on the web. I've repeated the stats from the last slide to show how dangerous the speeding problem is. You can see how likely you are to be severely injured or killed in the different speed ranges that FCDOT measured during the study. And if you look at some of the worst speeds shown in the pink to red, dark color range, some vehicles were going, like I said, up to 54 miles per hour. You can see that these speeds occurred throughout the day, including during times when kids are walking or waiting at their bus stops. So it's very dangerous. The AAA study only looked at the risk to pedestrians by cars and light trucks. Your chances get worse when you factor in SUVs. Many studies show that larger vehicles like SUVs and pickups are more likely to kill or seriously injure pedestrians and cyclists. They're more likely to hit people in the head or vital organs rather than the legs. According to another study, pedestrians are at least twice as likely to be killed by an SUV or other large vehicle. Age also makes a huge difference, since being hit is far more deadly for children and older pedestrians. As an example of how it is more deadly for older pedestrians, this graphic shows some of the data from the AAA study. A 70-year-old hit by a car going 35 miles per hour and a 30-year-old hit by a car going 45 miles per hour. And both have about a 50-50 chance of dying. And look at the 35 miles per hour in the chart outlined in green. A 30-year-old pedestrian has a 22% chance of dying. A 70-year-old chance is over double that at 54%. So why do we have a speeding problem? Basically, Fairway Drive gives people a false sense of security because of its design. We have no center lines. We have few parked cars on most of the road. No crosswalks, so pedestrians aren't expected to be in the roadway. No stop signs to hinder progress. We also have that scary left turn from Wheelie with the blind hill, and people gun it to make the turn and enter Fairway speeding already. So all this adds up to a nice wide road to speed down with very little to slow you down. How do we fix it? The design of Fairway Drives giving a false sense of security. So from a study I'm quoting here, if we want drivers to slow down, we don't ignore human behavior. We change the road design to make it feel less safe for drivers to speed. Another way of saying that is we need to change the street design to reflect reality. This is where the traffic calming measures come into play. They are intended to either hinder speeding or narrow the road and make it less comfortable to speed. So in other words, we fix Fairway Drive, or at least part of it, by voting for the plan. That's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Steve. I think Stuart has his hand up. So if we can walk Stuart through unmuting himself, and we might be able to hear him ask his question.
Okay, Stuart, I'm going to, 1 second, I have to change one meeting option, then I should be able to let you unmute.
Okay, and while Grace is doing that, I do have a slide up on the screen giving you how to answer or ask your question. Grace is turning on the chat option. So if you do not have a microphone or opportunity for a microphone, you're welcome to type in the chat. So to raise your hand, if you're calling from a phone, please push *5 to raise your hand. When it's your turn, the host will call on you to ask your question. You need to push *6, unmute, and after you are finished, please push *5 to unraise your hand. If you are raising your hand, you can see the little hand raised icon. That you just click on that and we will send you a notification to unmute yourself. So please be vigilant and look for that notification to pop up, and it will allow you to unmute yourself.
Okay, Stuart, are you able to unmute yourself?
And if Stuart is not able to do that, can we help him, Nicole, in any way? And if not, we might move on to Damon.
I think the chat's not enabled either. Did you say you were enabling that?
The chat should be enabled. Is the
Okay.
chat enabled, Nicole?
It might be a little delayed. Let me see. I know that Teams is, I don't know why at this point in time, it does not like to move quickly. So give us 1 second.
Okay.
Hi, this is Stuart.
Like the chat is coming up. Go ahead, Stuart. Stuart, I thought we heard you just for a second there. You want to try again? And would be possible for us to go ahead and move on to Damien right now, or to see if he is able to unmute?
Okay, sorry about that, guys. We will work on getting this figured out. If you can type your questions in the chat is working. If you're unsure on where to figure out where to get the chat on your screen, as I have on the slide here, that little chat option, click on that and it will show up to the right side of your screen. We do ask you to be patient. We do have quite a few people in, so we will try to answer or respond to the questions that are coming in order.
Hey, that's better. This is Damon.
All right, Damon. We'll go ahead and take your question right now, and then we'll answer Stuart's question that he put in the chat. Is that okay?
Sounds great.
All right.
Comment. I just wanted to mention for everybody on the phone, usually I'm not a big fan of speed bumps because, you know, who is, right? But since these are humps and they're 3 inches tall and we're seeing a lot of the fastest traffic when the kids are walking to school, you know, I can live with it for the community, and I'm just weighing in to encourage everybody to vote for a couple of speed humps. Doesn't seem too bad.
All right. Thank you, Damon. And then I think we had a question in the chat from Stuart.
Stuart said he had a question about parking next to the humps.
And so you are able to park next to these speed humps. You can even park on them if you need to. So there is no restriction regarding parking on or near the devices.
So I was able to unmute. Does that force people into the area that's cut out for the emergency vehicles? And would that have I'm for speed humps, by the way, but would that possibly throw us into another car as we're driving past? I don't think you should be able to park next to them, but I am
Right.
for
So I mean, we generally don't restrict parking around the device. The only time there might be a conflict, as far as that is concerned, is if the emergency vehicles are using the center of the road to, drive through the cutout channels. And then the person, if there is a person approaching from the other direction, then they should pull over.
Steve, for some reason, chat's still turned off for me, so I hope you don't mind if I use my mic. There's enough space for both a parked car and a travel lane, right? So I think that sounded like what his concern was. Okay.
Right. So there is plenty enough room. The only time there would be a conflict, people should, maintain their lane integrity. The chevrons that are painted on top of the devices can help with that. So it kind of gives guidance as to where people should be driving. With the cutouts or the speed cushions, there will be a center line 100 feet in both directions as you approach the device. So that will also help people maintain their lane integrity or stay in the correct area of the roadway. But if an emergency vehicle is driving down Fairway with their lights on, then they probably will be wanting to use those cutout channels. If there's a driver approaching from the other direction and they have an approaching emergency vehicle with their lights on and sirens going, they should be pulling over to the side of the road to give that emergency vehicle the right of way. Okay.
Okay. The next person who has their hand raised was Kim and Dan. Are you able to unmute yourself to ask your question?
I think so. This is Dan Schaefer. I'm on Red Oak Circle, and I'm just wondering. From looking at the map, I'm just wondering why there's no speed hump proposed for the area near the ball fields and the tennis court, because that's where there's a lot of foot traffic.
So we did, when this project was originally brought to Fairfax County DOT, we were looking at the whole length of Fairway Drive, and the task force felt that, it was a little bit too much for them to take on at this time. So we then cut back the extent of the area that we were reviewing. And the point of where we wanted to end that review was at the eastern intersection of Hook and Fairway. So I do know that there are some proposals being floated out there by Ruston Association for, some changes to the park area right there. And they had, as part of some of the changes that they were proposing, some devices themselves. So that might be another process and another project that might deliver some traffic calming on that section of roadway.
Okay, thanks.
And I do want to chime in. I know we have comments and we feel strongly about devices in the road. I would like to recommend and please ask that the chat be used only for questions at this time, so we can make sure that we answer everybody's question. Thank you very much.
Okay, our next question will come from chat. Ron asks, why wasn't the Orchard Green cluster included in the voting?
So when we did cut it back, we felt that the eastern section of the roadway was the one that was being addressed, and the people on that area or on that section of Fairway would be the people involved in the ballot process. Other folks, beyond Hook Road or the eastern intersection of Hook Road and Fairway Drive would have other means of accessing their home or coming down Fairway Drive from North Shore. I know that might not be the way that people might normally approach their house, but we are offering that as an alternate route to access these different parcels. So that's why the ballot area was devised the way it was.
Okay, thank you. We can take our next question from Kimberly if you're able to unmute yourself.
Yes, hi, this is Richard Loy with Kimberly Willison. We're a couple. One of the questions I've got here, it would appear that after they go over the last speed bump, then, the fact that they do 50 miles per hour going towards North is not a problem for anyone, especially where there's the walking trails and Hook Road and the ballpark and such. Why didn't anyone, I can understand wanting to take care of your own little space, but this is just, to me, something that I would think you would look at and say, perhaps it may create more problems for the people on the other end. And just wondering if anyone looked at, is there going to be a problem? Is there going to be a study done that, hey, once they get past that last barrier, all calls are off, there's no crosswalks, and there's plenty of kids. Did anyone think of this?
So, I mean, like Steve said, we were planning on doing the whole of Fairway Drive, and we tried to, I know Shamli was working with Reston for a while to try to incorporate the Hook Road plan. And at some point, I don't recall it being the task force decision to split that. Again, I think it was, I remember Shamli saying that it was, it was basically holding up things, trying to get Hook Road dealt with because they had to go to VDOT and deal with that. And we ended up breaking it up again so we could get something done on this end, which is where the project began initially. But I agree. I mean, we wanted more. There were also more devices proposed, but if you recall from the presentation, we had to get property owners to sign off on things. So, and we couldn't get everybody to do that. So there are fewer devices because of that.
And
I'll accept that explanation. I just don't agree with it. Have a good day.
You don't agree with what? The truth?
No, what I don't agree with is the logic. But that's fine.
Okay.
So would that mean that we would need to form our own task force at this end of the road?
Pardon me, can you identify yourself?
Yes, my name is
If we
Kim.
have one person talking at a time, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, we're together. We are together.
Okay, I'm sorry.
If you don't mind. Yeah, thank you. So does that mean that those of us at the other end of Fairway need to start our own task force to investigate this and go through the process?
Yes, I mean, you can do that. Obviously, the opportunity for you is there to do that. Like it was pointed out earlier, we did propose different devices along the whole length of the roadway, then also along this section of Fairway. So it is kind of hard to get everybody to agree to having a device, close to their home. So I think we had 2 other devices proposed between the furthest device to the west and that first intersection of Hook Road and Fairway. Unfortunately, they didn't make it onto the plan. So as far as the question you're asking is, yes, you can form your own task force. We would then be able to focus just on, the western section of Fairway, if that's the area that you would like to work on. And I do know that, an association does have, a plan for Fairway Drive that's adjacent to the park. I'm not positive, where it stands as far as, processing through VDOT, what it's going to look like at the end after, they give their approval, or if they give their approval, but at least there is something being considered for that portion of the roadway.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, the next question we can take from chat. Christina asked, has there been progress on researching installing speed monitoring signs as something to install quickly while waiting on the humps?
So currently, the pole mounted speed display signs, the electronic speed display signs are available through the police department. So I think that the Ruston Police Station should have 2 of them available. They can go in on a temporary basis. They would stay in place for a couple of weeks and then probably move to another location. So if you would like to request those, you can request those directly to the police, or possibly the 100 Mill District can help you with that, the 100 Mill Supervisor's Office.
Okay, we can take our next question from Greg. Greg, if you're able to unmute yourself.
Thanks. Yeah, a couple of questions. First of all, if we've got cutouts in these bumps, why would a delivery vehicle not just simply drive right through the cutouts like an emergency vehicle would? Second of all, why are we not talking about landscaped bump outs, islands, circles, things that look nicer and have a much better effect on slowing cars down?
So we did propose some other devices on this roadway. And so, we were looking at some, curb extensions or bump outs at a couple of the different intersections. But again, we need sign off from the people that live immediately adjacent to those locations, and we weren't able to get that. We had some chokers proposed, which, narrow the roadway from, the outside of the road, narrowing it in, and we weren't able to get sign off for that. You do lose parking with some of these devices, so that might have been a consideration whenever you're putting like a raised median or a choker on a roadway. You are going to impact people's access to their driveways and also their parking, in front of their home. So we did propose some of those devices, and we weren't able to, get the proper sign off to have them included on this proposal. As far as, anybody driving through the cutout channels, we have yet to install these. This is going to be the first time that we put them in. We're not positive, what the result is going to be. So we do have a concern about, other people beyond fire and rescue using the channels. So unfortunately, to make sure we did not impact fire and rescue, that's why the channels were included.
Okay, it seems like some of our biggest violators, though, are in fact the delivery vehicles. So they're gonna, I suspect, not be affected at all. But thank you.
Okay, I have a question in chat from Ralph that I missed earlier. He asked, why isn't road narrowing being considered?
So again, we were looking at, narrowing the road with some physical devices, and unfortunately, we weren't able to get those horizontal devices in place. As far as road narrowing is concerned, there is another process to go through for that. It was just not, part of this process.
Okay, we can take our next question from Igor, if you're able to unmute yourself.
Yes, I can. Thank you very much. Sorry. I raised my hand to ask a question, but now I have a comment as well. And let me start with a comment. I propose to move ahead with voting for current project. Sorry. And if it shows to be successful, if it proves to be successful, maybe there will be more people on western part of Fairway to organize a task force and start the process to extend the project. And for that, I mean, I don't like the speed bumps myself, but somebody needs to mute their mic. There was a feedback, sorry. And I don't like the speed bumps as well, but I guess kids are more important. And my question is, what can we do as a community to help this to move ahead? I'm willing to say go and knock on the doors of my neighbors and sort of ask them, hey, did you mail it? I'm willing to provide some mailing stamps just to get it done. And what can we do? What are the rules? What are allowed actions in that process? What we cannot do? Sort of ballot harvesting. Sorry for the term. Anything. Thank you.
So I do believe that the task force point of contact, Steve, said that they were going to include postage with the ballot packet when they issue. So that should be helpful as far as that is concerned. We do have, the ability to receive the ballots by email. So that should be helpful also. As far as, trying to drum up support during the ballot process, I mean, one, you can spend some time as a community in the task force prior to issuing the ballots, letting people know that they're coming and, trying to encourage them before the ballots are issued. And then once they go out, you can contact the supervisor's office to find out how many ballots have been received. And, if you find out that, you do need, more returned, use whatever methods you have available to reach the people in the ballot area, asking them to participate. So, you can contact, folks in the ballot area during this process, say, please vote, please vote. We generally are not allowed to say, who has returned their ballots, but we can tell you how many have come back.
That's good enough. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we can take the next question from chat. Damon asks, is this a typical speed cushion? 12 feet seems like a long distance for just a 3-inch rise.
Yeah, I mean, it's the typical profile for our speed hump, and now we're just adding the cutouts. So it does rise the 3 inches over the course of 6 feet. And, generally that's a significant impact. The only speed cushion that we have as an example to drive over is in the town of Vienna, or the closest one that I know of. And it's over on, I believe it's Kingsley Street Southwest off of Nutley Road over by Nutley and 66. And they're fairly new installations. I think they've been put in the past couple of years, so you can drive over those and see what they're like. And we will try to find the closest speed hump for folks in this area, in the Fairway area, to drive over, and we'll try to get that out to you during this meeting. So, Nicole, if we can look for a location nearby of just a speed hump, we can pass that information along so folks can drive over one.
Okay, we can take our next question from A. Webb, if you're able to unmute yourself to ask the question.
Hi, my name is Aaron Webb. I live at 11401 Hook Road. So I'm the last person who gets to vote. My neighbor doesn't get to. And a couple of my questions have been answered already. I haven't been super thrilled with the answers, but so mostly I wanted to comment. Reston is a planned community. That's where we came from. The part of the beauty of Reston comes from having a good plan and implementing that well. I very much want to see the traffic slow down, but I don't think this is a very good plan. It seems very piecemeal to me. It's out of harmony with the rest of the road and the plan that's going through there. I'd much rather see it done end to end. Fairway isn't a very long road. And it would be nice if it were the same all the way across. So I think there's three things we could do that would be a better plan, that would be a holistic way of protecting our pedestrians. The first thing is I think the bump outs and painted crosswalks would be sufficient visual cues and the psychological deterrence to help slow traffic down as it's transiting the whole road. I think we could work a little bit harder with some of our neighbors on where to place those bump outs and how to do that. It'll match the design that the Reston has already proposed for the park to have 3 bump outs along there, and that would be more kind of uniform across the whole length of the road. The second thing I think we can do to help protect our pedestrians is to complete the sidewalk on the north side of the road. If we look at, even looking at this diagram, you can see the lines of the right-of-way and the land that's actually owned by Fairfax County. You'll notice that 10 feet from the curb on the north side of the road is county land. And so the county doesn't even have to procure any land to install the sidewalks that are missing and incomplete. This would make it a lot easier to get to the bus stop out there on Wheelie Road without having to cross Fairway twice. To get there, it would also help protect school children that are walking along, as there would be two routes to walk along. That would be quite a bit safer. And then, of course, what would really make things better would be to have a light at the end of the road. That would also help with the bus stop, because getting the bus to head south to the metro, that's easy to do. Getting off the northbound bus is scarier because you're now on the wrong side of Wheelie. So a stoplight would be nice so that we could cross there. If the stoplight was in harmony with the other ones on North Shore and had a no right on red, that would discourage people from zipping across Fairway to try and get down Wheelie, I think, and help control our traffic quite a bit. So I'm definitely for helping protect our neighborhood. I think a couple of piecemeal speed humps and the attendant signage that comes with them, and especially in the case where we get to be an experiment, it's the first time we're going to install speed humps with cutouts in them. I mean, I'm a scientist by education and profession. When you have an experiment, you collect data and you see how it went, and you make changes, because lots of times experiments don't work. I don't want our street to be the site of a failed experiment where we're stuck with speed humps that really don't slow down the Amazon guy because it's got some cutouts in it. So there's a lot of things about this that don't sit very well with me. I think if we took a more thoughtful approach, we could come up with something that really served our community better. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I am a little confused. I don't think that the county owns property along the roadway. I think it might be VDOT right away, so it's probably owned by the state, the Commonwealth. So
it would be worth
just to get
looking
that clarity.
into. I know my plat is 10 feet in from the curb on my lot. So on 11401 there on the end. The county actually, I mow the county's grass though, because I want it to look good around my house, and I'm glad my neighbors do too. But yeah, from what I understand, the county does own. If not the county, it's Reston, in which case they should get at least one vote as well.
I believe, Steve, if I can chime in, I believe since they are VDOT owned and maintained roads, they do have that right away, but I can look into that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's fine. It is, publicly owned, and most likely it's owned by the state. So I just wanted to clarify that. So, okay. All right. Thank you.
Steve, is there?
Yes.
I wanted to comment on some of those things because we looked at pretty much every one of those things. We had VDOT come out, and I know Jamie had asked for a study for a light at Wheelie and Fairway. They said no to that. We'd asked for crosswalks. We'd asked for stop signs. They said no to those because of visibility issues. You know, there just wasn't enough space. You know, there was a curve where, you know, where we were looking at it. We asked for sidewalks. There was a program specifically to fund extending sidewalks because that was one of the reasons we couldn't get a crosswalk was because VDOT needs a sidewalk on both sides for people to walk to. So we wanted to try to extend those sidewalks, and there was a program for that, and we didn't get that either, unfortunately. So yeah, and I think you know, the other thing I was confused about was I thought the fire trucks had a specific wheelbase that fit the cutouts. Do delivery trucks have the same wheelbase, or maybe?
Unfortunately, all of the research that I've done, and we went out and we measured, you know, from the inside of the tire to the inside of the tire on the fire and rescue vehicles that would need to, you know, traverse, and they were pretty consistent with most vehicles. So the change isn't enough to preclude other vehicles from using those cutouts, unfortunately. So the variance between, you know, from, you have to measure from, you know, the inside of, you know, one tire, you know, the tire on the left side of the vehicle to the inside of the tire on the other vehicle, and measure the shortest span on whatever vehicle you're looking at. If it's an ambulance, or if it's a fire truck, if it's a pumper, if it's a ladder truck, you know, you have to go with the shortest span to accommodate all those vehicles. And they're all pretty, you know, pretty much within the same span of most vehicles. And then
Okay.
you're going to have to give them a little wiggle room with what they're aiming for. So it's a little wider. The channel is a little wider than the tire is. So we're going to have one island in the middle that allows that vehicle to, you know, kind of straddle over that island with the two cutouts on either side, and then the vertical deflection beyond on the left and right side, or the outsides of the channel. Okay. Did we have another question in chat?
Yeah, the next question comes from Rod. He asks for an update on the status of the traffic calming measure proposed for proposed for the Hook Road portion of Fairway Drive. I can unmute Chris Shoemaker if that.
Can you hear me now?
We are hearing somebody. I'm not positive who that was.
So this is Rod. I put the question in earlier. I think you've addressed it as maybe as best you can. I was under the impression that the proposals for the Hook Road portion from Orchard Lane to the west were further advanced. I was under the impression that they had been approved by the county and were awaiting VDOT approval. But from your comments, I'm taking that actually that may not be correct, and it may be a little more nebulous as to what the status is. But whatever that status is, I agree with everyone who says we need something to address traffic calming on the entire length of the road. But I hope that we all support this particular proposal. There is a 2-year wait, as was pointed out by Steve earlier, if this is not approved. So nothing would happen for 2 years. And this may not be the perfect solution, and maybe not one time tested and scientifically proved, but pragmatically, it's probably what we're going to get, given that you have to have sign off from property owners who abut and so forth. So I hope everybody will approve it, even though it's not perfect. And I'm hoping something on the other end of Fairway is coming along. And if we have to start over down there, then maybe a task force needs to be done there as well. But that's my comment, since I think my question essentially was addressed.
And I'm willing to assist another task force. Like we have a website, we got, you know, I can offer stuff to help, you know, resources that took us time to set up and everything. So I'm definitely willing to help out.
All right, thanks, Steve. Grace, would it be possible if Chris Schumacher from the Wrestling Association, if we can unmute him? I know he's kind of third in line with his hand up, but we have had some questions regarding the status of that project. And if he could possibly, because I feel like, I'm talking about something I don't really know the answers to. And if, Chris could actually share any information that he has, it might be helpful for some of the people asking questions here. So can we go ahead and unmute Chris and see if he can offer anything to the conversation?
Hi there, can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, so I'm Chris Shoemaker. I'm the Director of Capital Projects for Wrestling Association. In regards to the Hook Road project, we are currently in the middle of site plan submission, and we are actually very close to the finish line on that. However, that site plan is only focusing on elements within the park area. Traffic calming elements were considered very early on in the submission process. However, we started to hit very similar roadblocks, no pun intended, that this group encountered with VDOT regarding some of the elements we were wanting to propose, including installation of crosswalks, stop signs, or bump outs into the roadway, all of which came with a lot of pushback and scrutiny. We were advised by VDOT that any type of submission would be at least a 1-year time frame for their plan review. We would also have to prepare a crosswalk study for the mid-block crossing we proposed along Fairway Drive, and we had to justify its need. And one problem we have there is that there is no other pedestrian facility on the opposite side of that. So we'd have to figure out a method of connecting that crosswalk on the opposite side because we were unwilling to install one there without something there, and that's not our property. So we'd have to facilitate a way of doing that. We also were looking to do bump outs, which was kind of the preferred option that came about during the Hook Road Working Group back in 2017, where many of you were involved in that 1-year process to develop the kind of the master plan of the site. And VDOT again also had concerns regarding where parking would be restricted and visibility as well for that plan. And so because a lot of these elements and questions that were coming up and the desire and need to get other safety enhancements done on the park, including relocating the baseball fields inward on each other and further away from the roadway and more homogeneous connectivity throughout the park, we decided to pull that from the application and revisit it at a later date and time to be determined. But for now, that has not been included in the site plan that we have submitted and we'll be hopefully getting here soon. But we still would like to pursue it, but not at this time because we wanted to get these other elements executed more quickly than it would allow us otherwise.
All right, Chris, thanks for the information. It probably wasn't what people wanted to hear, unfortunately. But considering, the things that you have to go through to put something on a VDOT roadway, I guess we should not be too surprised. So are we going to hop back into the chat, Grace, with any more questions?
I think we can take a question from Aaron Mahoney, if you're able to unmute yourself.
Yes, hi, this is Kevin Mahoney. I'm here with my wife, Erin. And we live one house away from Fairway Drive on Greenbrier Court. And for 17 years, we had at least one child 10 or under, and they were outside all the time. We never had any concerns during that time about their safety, playing outside or crossing Fairway Drive. However, we do have a concern regarding emergency vehicles if the speed bumps or speed humps go in. We live, Fairway Drive is the pathway basically for emergency vehicles to 2 retirement communities, one on Fairway and one on North Shore Drive. Also on Greenbrier Court, we have several neighbors over 80 and a few over 90. The risk of loss of life is significantly greater with the speed bumps due to even slight delays for emergency vehicles than without speed bumps. And also, I was curious about in the study that was done, was there any account taken into how home values would be impacted? I'm in the real estate industry, and I know personally that I would not consider buying a home where I had to drive over a speed bump to leave home. And I did have one other question. Is there a difference between a speed bump and a speed hump, or is that more just a euphemism?
Okay, so to answer your last question first, there is a difference between a speed hump and a speed bump. That's not just, euphemism. So generally a speed bump is what you're going to find in a giant parking lot or someplace like that, where, you're trying to get traffic to slow down or a car to slow down to like 5 miles an hour. A speed hump has, so it's smaller, it's got a shorter span. They're generally about a foot across, maybe 18 inches. They're going to rise about the same 3 inches, maybe even more. With the speed hump, they're trying to, get people to drive closer to the posted speed limit of 25. You're generally able to traverse these devices at 15 miles an hour fairly comfortably. So there is quite a significant difference between these elements and what they're trying to accomplish. Regarding the real estate impacts, we've not really seen any impacts on property values. We had like one study that was done decades ago in the suburbs of Atlanta that did a comparison of, like type neighborhoods where, traffic calming devices were put in and where they weren't, and there was no, appreciable difference in the property values. So they did not rise or were not impacted or did not fall from the installation of the devices. Regarding, the response for fire and rescue, generally, if we were putting devices in that did not have the cutouts, yes, there would be an impact on response time. With these cutouts, the fire and rescue should not have to slow down when they're traversing. They should not be going down Fairway Drive much over 25 miles an hour. They're not allowed, or they're not supposed to be driving recklessly when they approach, even when they have their lights on and their sirens going. So they should be able to hit that cutout fairly consistently, and it should not impact their response times. So generally, we do say there is a delay whenever these devices are put in. It's normally around 3 to 10 seconds per device, but with the cutouts, that delay should be completely eliminated.
I did have just one follow-up comment. Regarding the cutouts, it appears to me that there's going to be a certain percentage of people that are going to use those cutouts. I know they're made for the emergency vehicles based on the spacing, but I think what will happen is a lot of cars will have one set of tires, like the right tires will go through the opening on the cutout. So you're going to have cars kind of driving closer to the middle of the road. And then you'll have some cars that will even do that on the curb side of the road. And as I look at the picture, and I'm hoping that's not accurate, but the cutouts, that actually has the emergency vehicles driving up the middle of the road. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that is extremely dangerous, in my opinion.
So if you do see an emergency vehicle approaching with their lights on, and that's when they're going to be using the cutouts, you as a responsible driver are supposed to pull over to the side of the road and stop if you can. So it should not be extremely dangerous.
I agree, that's what you're supposed to do. In my opinion, it is dangerous, but.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we can take our next question from chat. Amy asks about the explanation regarding balloting area, and says that all residents use the street, and asks how we can revisit extending the balloting area.
I mean, you can reach out to your supervisor's office. They'll contact us and we'll, take a look at it, but we don't feel that it should be expanded any more than it is. These devices aren't precluding people from using that part of Fairway Drive. We're just wanting the people that are on that end of the road to make the determination, because they pretty much have to use that portion of Fairway Drive or would be greatly inconvenienced.
Okay, we can take our next question from Boris and Olga, if you're able to unmute yourself.
Yes, I think so. I actually have a question, slightly different about these cutouts. The emergency vehicle does not travel with lights and sirens at night, generally, but it will need to do it if this cutout is in the middle of the road and there is a potential of oncoming traffic from the other side. So will they be using lights and sirens 24/7 in this case? And what does it do to peace and quiet on the street? Thank you.
As I understand, if a fire and rescue vehicle is responding to an event, they're going to be running with their lights on and their sirens on. If they are not running with their lights and sirens on, they don't need to use the cutouts. So if they are not responding to an event, then they don't need to be using their sirens. They don't need to be using the cutouts.
Okay, the next question is from Sally. She asks if additional speed signs and crosswalks have been considered and what would be the effect of that.
Additional what?
Speed signs and crosswalks.
So the speed signs are generally going to be posted by VDOT, not generally, but they're always posted by VDOT. They're going to post them on residential roads where you access. So unless the road is overly long, you're going to see a speed limit sign when you come on Fairway from Wheatley and when you come onto Fairway from North Shore. As far as crosswalks are concerned, I think we discussed that earlier. That's where all of this started with some of the community members asking VDOT for crosswalks, and VDOT was not willing to install them at different locations for different reasons. Either there was a sight distance issue or there was not pedestrian facilities on both sides of the roadway, which are things that would then preclude them from installing a crosswalk in a crosswalk.
Okay, thank you. We can take our next question from Jamie B, if you're able to unmute yourself.
Hi, I just wanted to say to everyone, I am the instigator of all of this. I first called VDOT because I saw 2 children nearly get hit by a car. They were almost halfway across the road at South Shore and Fairway when a car came around that slight curve that makes it difficult to see the car coming. They started to run back to the curb and then they did like a squirrel skitter in the street and ran forward instead. The car never slowed, it just veered around them. This was after I had had a close call, my husband had had a close call, and I'd seen other people run. I first called because of that intersection. It was Fairfax County that asked us to take on the whole road, which we agreed to do. And then the plan was split, not because of us. We had agreed to do the whole plan. So I do not want to be blamed for what is happening down Hook Road. We are incredibly concerned about the whole road. We are incredibly concerned about all of you. There is not a question of whether or not there is a danger on Fairway Drive. The data show that if you are struck, you will most likely be killed, you or your child. The system is set up in Fairfax County to use this program to try to get safety. This is all that we have. I've tried every avenue. I've tried all of your elected officials. This is the only thing we have. We all know that this is not perfect and maybe not that great, but this is what we have. And if you choose not to support it, we don't have anything else. There is no plan B to get anything done. And I ask you to consider that. And I ask you to consider all of the neighbors who were willing to sign off on devices, because you have neighbors who were not willing to sign off on devices. You have neighbors who said, I don't see a problem right in front of my house, and so the rest of the street is not my concern. They are asking us to come together as a community to vote for public safety, and they're asking us to vote at a level that is just incredible. So I ask you all, please, to carefully consider how you feel about this, because if this plan fails, they will make you wait 2 years to even try to do something else. Even if someone dies, 2 years after someone dies before you can try again to get people to vote for what the county has said over and over again is important to them, which is our safety. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any more questions in the chat?
Yeah, there's another question from Christina asking, why can't we get permanent monitoring signs?
We've been trying to get funding for permanent monitoring signs, speed limit signs for a little while. We've never been able to secure that funding. Generally, it would be a different type of program because, installing a permanent monitor like that, or even one that were even monitors that are semi-permanent, would require a different level of maintenance. So once the asphalt is installed on a roadway, it does fall to VDOT to maintain these devices. If we were to put in a speed monitoring device, it would require maintenance from the county, and we have not been able to establish a consistent, funding source to do that.
Okay, let me get our next question from from Suzanne. How many feet from the speed hump are the signs on both sides? If the placement of that sign is in front of a homeowner's property, do they get to sign off first?
For the speed hump, Nicole or Grace, can you read that question again?
Yeah, how many feet from the speed hump are the signs on both sides? If the placement of that sign is in front of a homeowner's property, do they get to sign off first? I think the speed hump ahead sign.
For the speed hump ahead sign, since it is going in the right of way, we don't necessarily need sign off for that. If, we do try to place it in a location that, is not in somebody's view when they're looking at the front of their house. But, for signage like that, as long as we're in the right of way, basically we can install where we need to.
Okay, I have another question from chat. Is from Kathy. Is there a reason that Fairfax County Police are not involved in this conversation? Could they perhaps put up speed traps on Fairway and Wheelie?
So as you go through this process, I tell every community, if you want enforcement, please ask for enforcement. But you need to go to the police for that enforcement. So, you can ask them directly that you've got a speeding concern. You can point to the effort that you're doing here, the data that's been collected, and say that, you would really appreciate some enforcement, but you need to ask the police to do that. So, they are a different entity, and that's who you would need to approach.
Steve, I have some information on that. We've done that. We have a task force member that tried to get police to monitor Fairway, and they have limited resources, obviously, to do enforcement. I think they had 2 officers available to do the monitoring in this area. I know, also that they, with the 50, I think 50 is 50 campaign or something like that. It was like the, recent campaign based on somebody nearly hitting a police car on one of the highways. That they did actually do additional monitoring recently on Fairway Drive. But, again, it's not something they can do 24 hours a day, like a speed hump or, a device. It's not going to solve it all the time. It'd be a temporary measure. So.
Okay, thanks, Steve. I think Kathy has her hand up.
Yeah, Kathy, you can go ahead and unmute yourself if you're ready to ask your question.
And she might have gone away.
That's what
she's still here, but her hand is not up.
Okay. I think we've got through all the questions in chat. If anybody wants to send in any more or raise their hand to ask a question. I'm seeing a question from the number ending in 2480. If you want to unmute yourself, you should be able to ask your question.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, great. I just have a follow-up question on step number 5. After we do step number 5, the installation, will there be a follow-up survey to find out whether the speed humps are working?
So, we generally try to do, follow-up surveys as often as we can. We obviously don't do all of the installations, but since this is going to be the first devices we put in with cutouts, we will be doing a follow-up study probably, within 6 months of the devices going in.
Okay. I'll hold you to that. I'm really interested to find out whether these things work. I'm an ex-firefighter and an ex-snowplow driver. And so those are my concern is with the snowplow and or the fire department response time. I think that the questions have been answered as far as the response time on the firefighters. The gentleman that said that there was no sirens or lights at nighttime, I tend to disagree with that. I think there are lights on the fire apparatus when we do respond at nighttime. We do try to keep the siren to a minimum coming through this type of situation.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And did we get one more question in chat? Or is it a comment?
I believe Kathy, you're unmuted. Kathy, if you had a question, we have
yes,
you on
I do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
You got me? So I live off of South Shore Drive, which is very close to the end of Fairway towards Wheelie Avenue. The sign that says 25 miles an hour facing me as I go towards Wheelie, as opposed to turned the other way, which would tell people when they're coming from Wheelie that they need to do 25 miles an hour. And if you go to the other end of the road, you have the same issue. People going towards North Shore, the sign says 25 miles an hour, instead of when people shore, the sign should say 25 miles an hour. So that kind of, I have an issue with that one. But my really big problem is, how do I involve the police department both on Fairway and Wheelie and North Shore to set up speed traps? You know, and I just heard that you all said I need to call them, but I would like to have the reversed so that when you come onto Fairway, either way, you're told to slow down, not when you end Fairway. Thank you.
All right, sorry about the slow reaction. I was trying to look at Google Maps, and it does look like the one coming off of Wheelie is facing in the correct direction. So the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit is, at least as far as what I'm seeing in the street view in Google Maps, it is facing the westbound traffic. Let me see if I can get a location there. It looks like it's just beyond the first cul-de-sac. So it's just beyond that Beaver Circle on the north side of Fairway. I am seeing a speed limit sign posted at 25 miles an hour on Fairway that is facing the correct direction for people approaching the Wheelie side. But, you know, we can, you know, go out there, we can field check, make sure everything is okay. If we do see issues with the speed limit sign facing in the wrong direction or giving, you know, information as people are leaving the roadway, we'll go ahead and reach out to VDOT. And, you know, again, the speed trap would be something that you would need to take up with the police department.
I think Nicole was able to answer the last question that was in chat. So as of right now, we don't have any questions from chat or any more hands raised if anybody wants to get in a question.
And were we ever able to locate like the nearest speed hump for people to drive over? I really should know where they are, but I can't think right now where the nearest one is to Fairway Drive. We can go ahead and do some research on that after the meeting and get that information out to the task force. But the device sample that you can drive over that does have the cutouts, that is a speed hump, is in the town of Vienna off of Nutley on, I believe it's Kingsley. So it's close to the metro station there, right off of 66 off of Nutley. So that would be the closest thing, the closest device that's similar to what we're trying to install. So I do believe that Nicole has put up some contact information. So if people do have questions following this meeting, they can email to dotinfo@fairfaxcounty.gov and put Fairway Drive traffic calming in the subject line and post their question there. Send us comments. If you have a question, we will respond. That will get back to one of the staff members dealing with the traffic calming program. You can also call 703-877-5600 and ask to speak to somebody about the Fairway Drive traffic calming project, and they will put you in contact with one of the staff members here tonight. Then also there's some contact information for the Hunter Mill District, Hunter Mill Supervisor District Office, and that is huntermill@fairfaxcounty.gov. And again, Fairway Drive traffic calming in the subject line, or you can call 703-478-0283 and ask to speak to somebody about the traffic calming project on Fairway Drive. Okay, and just as a reminder, as we leave here tonight, the task force should make a determination if they want to go ahead and move to the ballot phase, or if they want to reconvene and reconsider the plan, or maybe put a halt to this process. So those are the three options they have available to them. They can, try to, redo what we've been doing, but we have been at this for a number of years, and, what we have available is something that's taken us a while to get here. So do we have any other questions before we go? I'm not seeing any hands up. And Nicole, do you see, or Grace, do you see anything in the chat?
I'm seeing one ask for your email. That's the one question. But I think it's posted on with the .info at Fairfax.
Yeah, right, so we have that email address up right now. Okay.
And if you want to reach directly to us, just make sure you state that in that email that goes to the DOT info email, and just make sure that it's directed to one of us, and we'll try to answer it the best we can, or as fast as we can. Also, I do see that the task force and also Chris Shoemaker put in links that are to help understand the projects in the future, and also for the traffic calming process that they have put together. Also, I believe Shamali put, I guess that I'm sorry, they must have changed their email, but to reach the Hunter Mill office, it's going to be Hunter Mill BOS at fairfaxcounty.gov. So we will be in there. They also have that on their website as well.
All right, thank you for that correction, Shamali. If there are no more questions, then I think we're going to conclude for this evening, and everybody have a good night.
Thank
you all.
Good night. And good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.